In the desolate plains of Peru, there's a 2,000-year-old message etched into the earth. Hundreds of colossal figures, a spider, a hummingbird, a monkey, are so vast they can only be truly appreciated from the sky. For a century, they have pointed towards the heavens, baffling scientists and historians. Were they a giant astronomical calendar? A desperate plea for water to the gods? Or maybe a map meant for something not of this world? As new evidence reveals, the truth might be more complex and ingenious than we ever imagined. This is one of the biggest enigmas of modern archaeology, a silent testament to a lost civilization that managed to sculpt the very desert itself for decades. The question has echoed through history. Why? Why create these immense figures, visible only from a perspective their creators could never achieve? The answer isn't a single revelation, but a journey into the heart of a culture that lived and breathed between the earth and the heavens. The grand enigma, the story of the Nazca Lines, as we know it, begins not on the ground, but in the air. For centuries, these enormous geoglyphs lay hidden in plain sight, their sprawling forms indistinguishable from the desert floor. It wasn't until the 1930s, when commercial pilots began charting routes over the Peruvian coastal plain, that the true scale of the mystery was revealed. Passengers reported seeing what they described as primitive landing strips and gigantic figures carved into the landscape below. Suddenly, the world was confronted with a baffling puzzle. Who could have created these artworks, some stretching up to 1,200 feet long, and for what audience? The initial mystery quickly deepened with the sheer scale and variety of the designs. There are over 800 straight lines, some running for 30 miles, and more than 300 geometric designs like trapezoids and spirals crisscrossing the plains. Interspersed among them are about 70 figures of animals and plants, like a condor, a lizard, and a famous hummingbird. The combined length of all the lines is estimated to be over 800 miles, 1,300 kilometers, a staggering feat of artistry. They were created by a people we now call the Nazca, who flourished in this arid region roughly between 200 BC and 600 AD. Before we can tackle the why, we have to understand the how, and the how is a testament to elegant simplicity. Creating the lines didn't require advanced technology, just a deep understanding of the environment. The desert floor is covered in a layer of reddish-brown, iron oxide-coated pebbles. The Nazca people found that by simply removing this top layer, they could expose the lighter, yellowish-gray subsoil underneath, creating a stark and durable contrast. The lines themselves are typically shallow, only 4 to 6 inches deep. Archaeologists believe they would have first created smaller models, and then used simple tools, like wooden stakes and ropes, to scale them up with remarkable accuracy. In fact, wooden stakes have been found at the end of some lines, supporting this very theory. This simple yet effective method explains how a pre-industrial culture could create such monumental works. But it does nothing to explain the monumental effort. To dedicate generations of labor to a project whose true form could only be fully grasped from high above implies a purpose that transcends simple decoration. The Nazca were not just drawing in the sand, they were communicating. But who or what were they trying to reach? This question has given rise to some of science's most compelling investigations and history's most sensational theories. To find the answer, we have to peel back the layers of this mystery, one theory at a time. The astronomical observatory? One of the first and most enduring theories is that the Nazca Lines are the largest astronomy book in the world. This idea was first seriously proposed in the 1940s by American historian Paul Kosok. While studying the lines, noticed that some of them aligned with the sunset on the winter solstice. He passionately declared the sprawling desert a giant astronomical calendar. But it was his young German assistant, a mathematician and translator named Maria Reich, who would dedicate her life to proving this cosmic connection. Known as the Lady of the Lines, Reich spent 5 decades living in the desert, meticulously mapping, cleaning, and protecting the geoglyphs, often with little more than a broom, a ladder, and a sextant. She was convinced they were a sophisticated calendar designed to track the movements of the sun, moon, and stars, which would be crucial for timing planting and harvests in such a harsh climate. Her research produced some tantalizing correlations. She proposed that the famous monkey geoglyph represented the Big Dipper, while another prominent researcher, Phyllis Pitluga, suggested the giant spider figure is a diagram of the constellation Orion. For a culture without a written language, the desert floor itself could have served as a monumental text to pass down vital celestial knowledge. The sky was their clock, their calendar, and their guide, and the lines in this view were the hands that told the time. But if it was a calendar, it was a very confusing one. As more researchers like Gerald Hawkins studied the lines in the 1960s and 70s, holes began to appear in the astronomical theory. Using computer analysis, they found that while some lines did align with celestial bodies, the vast majority did not. Critics argued that with hundreds of lines and thousands of stars, some random alignments are almost inevitable. The theory was accused of being based on selective evidence, highlighting the few hits while ignoring the overwhelming number of misses. The grand vision of a celestial clock began to fade, pushing investigators to look for answers not in the distant stars, but in something far more essential to survival. The mystery of the Nazca Lines is like a giant puzzle with pieces scattered across centuries. We've just examined the first major piece, the astronomical theory. But as we've seen, it doesn't quite fit. So if you're finding this journey into ancient enigmas as fascinating as we are, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. We're constantly exploring the world's greatest mysteries, and you won't want to miss where this investigation leads next. What do you think so far? Was it a failed calendar? Or is there another explanation? Let us know in the comments below. A map to water? If the lines weren't primarily pointing to the stars, perhaps they were pointing to something much more precious. In one of the driest places on Earth, where it might not rain for years, no resource was more vital or sacred than water. This has led to one of the most compelling theories, that the Nazca Lines are deeply connected to a ritualistic cult of water worship. This theory, powerfully articulated by archaeologist Johann Reinhard, shifts the focus from the heavens above to the earth below. Reinhard demonstrated that the worship of mountains and water sources was a cornerstone of ancient Andean religion. Mountains were seen as the homes of powerful deities who controlled weather and water. The lines, according to this theory, were not an observatory, but giant, sacred pathways and prayer maps created to petition these water-giving gods. The evidence is woven into the geoglyphs themselves. Many of the animals depicted like spiders and hummingbirds are symbols of water and fertility in Andean cultures. Monkeys are native to the wet Amazon jungle, not the arid Nazca Desert, so their inclusion suggests they were powerful symbols, imported into the landscape as a visual prayer for the water they represented. This ritual purpose is backed by archaeological finds. Small caches of offerings, like smashed pottery and seashells, have been found near the geoglyphs, suggesting they were active worship sites. Researchers have noted that many of the large trapezoids and straight lines seem to point directly towards the mountains, the ultimate source of the rivers that feed the Nazca Valley. The purpose wasn't to create an irrigation system, but to be part of a grand ritual to ensure the gods would send water down from the mountains. Building on this, other researchers, like David Johnson, proposed a more direct connection, arguing that the lines act as a literal map tracing underground water sources. Johnson claimed the geoglyphs consistently correlate with geological faults that channel subterranean water in the sophisticated ancient wells, or puquios, that the Nazca built to access them. While this specific map theory is debated, it reinforces the central idea. Water was an obsession for the Nazca people. Whether a prayer to the gods or a map to a well, The lines pointed towards the source of life itself. Sacred pathways? But what if the lines weren't meant to be viewed from above at all? What if their main purpose wasn't what they pointed to, but the very act of walking on them? This theory suggests the lines were sacred pathways for pilgrimages and rituals, which fundamentally changes our perspective from a distant viewer in the sky to a participant on the ground. One of the most compelling clues is the construction of the animal figures. Almost everyone is made from a single, unbroken line. You can trace the entire shape from start to finish without lifting your finger. This strongly suggests they were meant to be walked, perhaps in a grand procession. Archaeologists have found that the soil along the lines is often highly compacted, much more than the surrounding desert, indicating they were indeed trodden upon by many people over long periods. This theory connects directly to the most important ceremonial center of the Nazca culture, Kawashi. Overlooking the plains, Kawashi wasn't a city, but a massive pilgrimage site with over 40 mounds topped with adobe pyramids. For hundreds of years, it was the religious heart of the Nazca world. Research suggests a powerful link between the lines and this sacred center, with many lines appearing to lead directly towards it, as if funneling pilgrims towards the temples. A 2015 study argued that the lines were used by different groups traveling to Kawashi, identifiable by the different styles of geoglyphs they created. This suggests different communities participated in the creation and use of the lines as part of their pilgrimage, perhaps leaving a figure as an offering. Imagine hundreds of people processing in single file along the outline of a giant hummingbird, chanting and praying. The journey along the path was the ritual. This idea doesn't negate the other theories. It incorporates them. The pilgrimages to Kawachi were almost certainly to perform rituals for water and fertility, timed by the stars. The lines, then, become the sacred stage upon which these vital dramas were performed, not just a message to the sky, but a living ritual landscape. A message to the gods or aliens. Of course, no discussion of the Nazca Lines is complete without addressing the theory that has completely captured the public imagination, that they were messages for visitors from another world. Popularized in 1968 by Eric von Däniken's book, Chariots of the Gods, the ancient astronaut theory proposed the lines were nothing less than landing strips for alien spacecraft. Von Däniken argued that the sheer scale of the figures and the fact that they can only be properly seen from the air were proof of alien influence. How else could a primitive culture create them without an aerial view? The long trapezoids looked like runways, and one famous humanoid figure was quickly nicknamed the astronaut. This idea became a cultural phenomenon, feeding a public fascination with the unknown. For most archaeologists and scientists, however, the alien theory is a modern myth. It lacks any credible evidence, and more importantly, it disrespects the ingenuity of the Nazca people. First, the idea that the lines can only be seen from the air just isn't true. Many figures are visible from the surrounding foothills. The Nazca could have easily directed construction from these higher vantage points. Second, the how is easily explained by the simple method of removing the top layer of pebbles, which required organization, not alien tech. Most importantly, the symbols aren't alien at all. They are deeply rooted in Andean culture. The same animals and figures are found consistently on Nazca pottery and textiles. The so-called runways are more logically explained as ceremonial spaces or paths pointing to sacred mountains. But while we can dismiss alien intervention, we shouldn't dismiss the core concept. The lines were almost certainly meant to be seen by powerful beings in the sky. Those beings just weren't extraterrestrials. They were the gods of the Nazca pantheon. The sky was home to the mountain deities who controlled water and the sun and star gods who governed their calendar. Creating colossal images on the desert floor was a perfectly logical way to communicate with these divine forces. So in a way, von Däniken was right about one thing. The Nazca lines were pointing to the sky. He was just wrong about who was looking back. So, after a century of investigation, why did the Nazca Lines point to the sky? The answer, it seems, isn't one simple explanation. The Nazca Lines weren't just one thing. They were a dynamic, multi-layered ritual landscape used for centuries. They were, at times, an astronomical calendar, allowing priests to track the solstices. They were a constant, desperate prayer for water, with symbols of fertility etched into the earth as offerings to the mountain gods. They were sacred pathways that guided pilgrims to the great ceremonial center of Kawashi. And yes, they were a message to the gods in the sky, a way for a culture to communicate with the powerful forces that governed their survival. The lines likely served all these functions, often at the same time. A procession along a spider geoglyph could have been a ritual to summon rain, timed to a celestial alignment. The true genius of the Nazca was in weaving all their most profound beliefs about the cosmos, survival, and the sacred into a single monumental tapestry of earth and stone. And the story is far from over. The mystery continues to unfold. In recent years, drones and artificial intelligence have revealed hundreds of previously unknown geoglyphs. A 2024 project by Japan's Yamagata University and IBM announced the AI-assisted discovery of 303 new figures. These included unsettling images of killer whales holding knives and scenes of human sacrifice, adding grim new layers to our understanding of their rituals. These new, often smaller figures, found along ancient pathways, might have also served a more personal purpose, perhaps created by individuals or small groups on their journeys. Each new discovery reminds us that we're only just beginning to read this 2,000-year-old message. The Nazca Lines point to the sky not for one reason, but because the sky home of their gods, bringer of rain, canvas of the stars, was the center of their universe. They weren't looking for aliens. They were looking at everything that mattered. And in the silent, sprawling figures of the Peruvian desert, that look continues to mystify and inspire us to this day.